and welcome to this week's episode of the HIPAA Insider Show. I'm your host, Adam, and today we're discussing a groundbreaking topic, the SALUD protocol, which is a revolutionary decentralized healthcare data system currently being piloted in El Salvador. Joining us to shed light on this incredible project is Fabian, one of the visionaries behind SALUD protocol and a key figure at Illuminodes, the Salvadoran tech initiative leading this charge. Fabian, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you going?
I'm doing well, thanks. We've talked quite a bit before this, so it's great to have you on. Could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
I'm Fabian. I am now in El Salvador, originally from the Netherlands. Spent a lot of time in Australia. But now here in El Salvador, I guess riding the wave of opportunity and change that's happening in the world. I think that's probably the best way to put it. I mean, I think we all realize that there's a lot of change going on in the world. I mean, we're seeing that obviously in all the political realms with, people like Trump, and what's happening over here with people like Bukele and Argentina, and obviously stuff that's happening in Suriname. So yeah, there's a lot of change happening, and I think the world is sort of moving into a more of a decentralized mindset, and I think this is one of the places where it sort of started. So again, my history is in IT, originally mechanical engineer, funny enough, but ended up, I did that for 3 years. And then fell back to the fact that I was always futzing around with computers and software, and ever since I was a kid, I guess. So that's sort of what brought me back to IT, and have been doing that for a long, long time. I've been, I guess, in the IT industry over 25 years now. But I guess my reason for being here, going down this path that we're actually discussing today is very much about, I guess, me being someone that believes in sovereignty, self-reliance, and all that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, what fuels this project. That fuels what I do every day, and fuels the fact that I'm actually now in El Salvador doing this project as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And for the audience, I first heard about Fabian on, I can't remember the exact podcast, but it was a Bitcoin related podcast. And obviously, Bitcoin's very much related with the concept of financial freedom. Fabian, you come from an IT background, or you worked in IT for healthcare. Is that right? Could you tell us about some of the problems that were encountered there, and what problems you're aiming to solve with the SALUD protocol? And one extra question, how Nostr can help you got the Nostr sign behind you.
Yeah, I like this. It's a bit of my pride and joy, this sign. Awesome. It came out of a booth that we had at Adopting Bitcoin. That was, I think, in November here. Look, like you said, Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is a new way for money and state to be separated from each other. And I think we've seen over the last century, if not longer, that, money is becoming more and more centralized, more and more controlled, more and more centrally controlled. And obviously in 2008, this whole Bitcoin thing came along, which is really about separating those two things. Really, in the past, we had the church and the state, they were one, and that was separated. And now money and the state are also, tied to each other with the way that the world works. And now we're seeing that it's no longer working, and that's now being separated through open source protocols and technologies like Bitcoin. So as the world is centralizing, you can obviously say, okay, it's getting too centralized. And what I'm about, as I said, I like self-sovereignty. I like understanding freedom. I believe in the individual. Bitcoin's great. It's wonderful. But what about the other stuff? What about things like my personal information, my personal data, the stuff that I own, the stuff that I create, my physical being, that too is being centralized and has been centralized over the decades and decades and decades. And we've seen that over the last few years. I don't know if you've been around in the last few years, but we've definitely experienced what it's like to have more centralized health systems, more centralized thinking, more centralized ways of running a society. And as a result, we've been restricted a lot. And that's not going to be flying with someone like myself who believes in self-sovereignty and stuff like that. So that sort of inspired me to actually go down this path. And I have a history in health administration systems. So I know what these systems are like, and I understand how they're actually operating. And I understand you have zero as a patient or a doctor even. You have zero control over that data, and you have zero control over what's done with that data. And that obviously brings along a lot of problems with, what is real, what is not real, what are they doing to my information, what is being shown about me, as a doctor even, what am I might be putting something out, but who knows what's happening to that information? Is someone playing around with it? I don't know, right? And that sort of inspired me because, as I said, I've been in these systems for a long time, to say, okay, well, with this world that's changing, and with this opportunity that I guess El Salvador is opening up of separating, of bringing back self-sovereignty, let's do something about that, and let's go over here and see what we can do. And that's where this whole thing came from.
It's really, really refreshing to hear. This is the HIPAA Insider show. So we focus, the majority of our episodes are talking about regulations and restrictions. And it's really refreshing to talk to someone a little bit more about freedom and the possibility of lifting, restrictions and regulations. Because I think, our audience, it's a mix of developers that are in the healthcare industry, some doctors and patients. And I don't think it's, at the personal level, at the individual level, I don't think there's any, grand scheme from a doctor's office to try and, control patients' data. But I think it's just the nature of technology and the way it's evolved. Like we go back to the paper age. It's a lot more efficient to have a filing cabinet with the patient records, so that when the patient comes in, it's very easy to access. Oh, if the patient forgot their documents, whatever it was, it's not a big deal. We've got all the documents here. But as things evolve, that then, as you said, gets more centralized. It's no longer, each doctor's office has the documents. Now it's all with third-party data centers. So that creates an issue there. So I think does that maybe lead us into the technology, like maybe talk a little bit about the technology and how that's evolved, and a bit about the SALUD protocol?
I think, I think you're right. I mean, one of the ways that I often explain it, you might have heard of this before, but is our lives are we obviously have our physical beings and we live in our houses and do our things and go surfing and do whatever. But a lot of our lives is actually in the digital realm nowadays. And that wasn't the case 50 years ago, and certainly wasn't the case 100 years ago. But it's been evolving into the digital realm. And what's happened is the way that technology's evolved, and probably not initially with any bad reasons, but evolved in such a way where we've been we've lost control of our own digital information. We do not own our own digital information. And that's not just in the health sector, that's everywhere, really. That's everywhere. So the world has evolved, and the digital world has evolved in the way that we don't really control our identities. And if we can't control our identities, then we can't control the data that's associated with our identities either, that we actually put out, that is about us, that's etc. And that's in a world where literally, I would say, I mean, sure, I go do all the soccer things and drive my car, but literally all the stuff that is about information is in the digital realm. And that means that more than 50% of our existence is in that digital space. So we now don't have a way to actually control that. And I think what we're doing, and specifically what technologies like Nostr and Bitcoin are doing, is actually allowing us to take back control of ourselves, our digital selves, like we have in the physical world, in the digital realm. So in other words, we can take back ownership, we can take back control, etc. And it just isn't like that right now. So we need to, I believe, as a society, we really need to shift about, we need to have that same control over us and our things in the digital space as in the physical space. And that's what this Nostr thing is creating. This Nostr protocol is giving us. And I think, to be perfectly honest, that's where the future is going. We all, as I said, we're seeing all this crazy stuff happening over the last few years, and people are starting to wake up. I often refer to the fact that if the crazy health stuff hadn't happened in the last 5 years, people wouldn't have been aware of what's going on, and people wouldn't have been woken up enough to say, okay, this is important, this needs to be addressed. And that's where this comes from. So that obviously is the spawning of the whole SALUD protocol project as well.
Yeah, and I think next we'll want to get a little bit technical and talk a bit about the SALUD protocol. But could you give the listeners who haven't heard of Nostr before an easy way for them to check it out? Like, because it's a protocol, right? But how would they be able to interact with it just at a user level?
Yeah, so Nostr is a protocol. It uses the same sort of idea as Bitcoin, where you have public and private keys. So you own your private key. The public key is out there in the wild, and people can interact with that public key. That public key is associated with messages and information, etc. And
so instead of things like, let's say, a social media app like Twitter or something, where you have your username and password, that's not necessarily the case here. There's a public key and a private key. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, with that public key, which is a portable now because it's mine, right? I control that private key, so therefore I control the public side of it as well. I have the ability to log into digital applications, but I control the data in those different digital applications associated with my keys. What that means then is that I can use that in, say, social media space. So in other words, for people that don't know Nostr, the best way I would say to start is in the social media realm, where there's a whole bunch of applications out there that allow you to take that key, plug those keys in, and then instantly be in this social media realm. So there's different, a bit like email, right? It's a little bits. I can take my email address, I can put it in there, but I can use different applications to interact with the email.
It's really cool. Like, as an example of the way that we first started to interact, I was using something called Primal. I'm not sure what you were using. I don't really care. I was able to direct message you, and you were able to reply back to me. And it was a secure way of doing that.
Yeah. So for the social media realm, there's applications called Primal. I use Amethyst on my mobile phone. I actually use multiple different applications to access the same information with my keys.
Yeah.
Right? So it's no longer a Twitter or a Facebook or whatever. They have to be on that specific platform and only on that platform.
Yeah.
No, with my keys, I can plug my identity in, and that identity starts interacting with whatever based on my identity, not based on the application itself like the others.
Yeah, so it's almost like you've got a key and you're a traveler, and every time you go into an Airbnb and you unlock the Airbnb and go in, your suitcase is there, and you're ready to vacation, right?
Yeah, sure. That's a way. And the funny thing is that with that key, like you said, is I can unlock it. No one else can unlock it, and that's the more important part. But the big part there is that it's portable, right? So in other words, if tomorrow there's another application using Nostr that everyone else likes more for social media, then what I can do is I can say, okay, I'm going to take that key and I'm going to plug that key into that, and then start using that application. So again, I'm not restricted to a Facebook or an Instagram or a Twitter or anything like that. I'm actually connected through an open source protocol that no one controls and no one has control over.
Okay.
That's big. That's
all right.
Very, very big.
Start from there. So we've got a good handle on what Bitcoin is and what Nostr is. Could you talk a little bit about the SALUD protocol and how that fits into Nostr?
Yeah. So what we've decided that, okay, if I have ownership over my own digital identity and I can control my own digital data, that also means that I can control any health data as well, right? Because right now in the world, the way that it's managed is that everything is centralized through a few software businesses out there, massive software businesses. I mean, I'm guessing you've heard of the players like the Cerners out there, right?
Yeah, and Athena,
yeah. And they are the ones that actually control the health data through their centralized databases, centralized applications, just like Twitter controls everything in their Twitter world and Facebook controls everything in the Facebook world. So in other words, you as an individual, you don't own anything. You don't control anything. You don't own, and certainly not your health information. And that then means that other people do. And if other people do, they can do whatever they want with that information. And what we've said, okay, well, let's use this Nostr protocol, which no one controls and no one actually owns or anything like that, to actually build what we call the SALUD protocol. So we are in the process of building the SALUD protocol. What does that mean? It means that I, as an individual, as a patient, right, I have control over my own health data. So if I have a pathology test that is done, right, I actually get control over that pathology data, and it is up to me what I do with it. If I go to another doctor and they say, I need to have this information, fine. What do you need? And I can say, okay, well, I need this, this, and this, and this. So in other words, I can say, you need those 10 bits of information about me, not 100 bits of information about me, 10 bits of information about me, okay? And I can release that to this individual, okay? Or someone says, it has an insurance situation, I need to have an insurance claim or something like that. Again, this insurance company does not need 100 points of information about me. There are specific things that are important in an insurance claim. And then I, as an individual, can say, okay, these are the bits of information that can be released to that company, whatever it may be. So what we're doing, though, is we're actually building what is called have you ever heard of FHIR? FHIR?
Yeah.
All right. I would hope you actually would.
Yeah, we come across it a couple of times.
Yes. But so what we've done and what we're doing is, so we're actually building the FHIR standard, which is now an ISO standard, right? Mm-hmm. In integrating that into the Nostr messages that we're creating with the SALUD protocol. So in other words, when using the SALUD protocol, you're actually using a standard that's been around for almost 30 years and is globally adopted at the same time. So we're using Nostr to control the information, manage the information, own the information, but still applying a global standard to that information. So in other words, we can still communicate with systems that are out there and existing out there as well as the fact that here in the countries like El Salvador, where we're deploying this, right, we're actually getting them to a level where they haven't been yet with that global standard. So we're actually lifting them over here as well. So I hope that sort of makes sense. So the idea behind SALUD protocol is that all of a sudden we own our own identity, digital identity. Therefore, we can control our own digital information, including our health information, but specifically around the health space. And SALUD is actually the Spanish word for health. So that's why we called it the SALUD protocol.
That's perfect. But it stands for something as well, right?
Yeah. SALUD stands for Sistema de Administración Libertad, as in like free, Único for the unique individual, y Decentralizado. So it's an individual, unique, decentralized health administration system. That's basically what it comes down to. Yeah. And the idea is that what we do is we're building this, and we're building this in the real world. So in other words, we've actually teamed up with an organization called Para Vida Hospital Group. So Para Vida Hospital is a hospital in El Salvador, a private hospital in El Salvador, that was crazy enough to say, yes, we love this idea. We want to go down this path with you. And we're actually building this SALUD protocol. So it's a pilot, right? We're building that with them in the real world, because as much as, you've got all your Twitters and your online, social media stuff that we discussed earlier with Nostr, the real world is very different to just online type applications. You're dealing with real doctors, you're dealing with real patients, you're dealing with real hospitals that are actually interacting with this. So the big thing is, how are patients going to interact with this? How are doctors going to interact with this? And that's why we've actually teamed up with the hospital to actually build these real world applications to make sure that it actually gets adopted by the real world properly. And that the real world can easily interact with this technology. And I can tell you so far in what we've rolled out, the beauty is that the administration and the doctors have no idea that they're using Nostr. They're just using a system that works better for them.
Yeah.
And is lifting them just from a technological perspective, but they don't know that they're actually using Nostr. If we actually ask them, do you know what Nostr is? They would say no.
Yeah. And they don't need to know. I mean, it's the equivalent of asking a doctor, do you know what FHIR is? And say, well, no, but somehow the data gets communicated from one facility to another. It stays
it's important. In the real world, people do not care if, like you said, if we're using TCP/IP protocol to communicate on the internet. All they want is someone to be able to push a button, and they on the other end push another button, and they can talk to each other like we're doing right now. Who cares how it works? So no, absolutely, it's important that the user at the end of the day just has a good experience, and that's why we're building it in the real world with the real world.
Yeah, and I can't stress this enough. This is very, very early stages. I mean, if people talk about Bitcoin and they say it's just the start, but Bitcoin's been around for over a decade now. Was it 15 years, 16 years? Now, Nostr, I think 2020 was when it was first started to get coded.
I think it's about 4 years.
Yeah. And SALUD is fresh off the press. I mean, Nostr, I think I was looking the other day, it has about 20,000 active and npubs or users. So it's the user base is very small, and so very, very early stages. So it makes sense that you're doing this pilot and testing it in a real world environment. But the advantage with it being open source is that things go very fast, and they can get to a very professional level, and the software and UI can get to a great place very quickly, right, rather than it being in-house. So really, really exciting here. Do you think, from that experience, do you think other countries could learn from the experience that you're having in El Salvador and adopt similar protocols?
Yeah, so as I said, it's obviously open source. The way that we are building this is in 3 phases. So in other words, we've finished phase 1, we're now into phase 2, and then in phase 3, I'm expecting that in the next, say, 6, 12 months, whatever it is, we'll have the whole thing sort of defined properly. And we'll put our white paper out there saying, okay, well, this is the SALUD protocol, this is how it works. These are the parts of it. One of the parts of it is the what they call the NIP 82 Nostr implementation possibility. That's so these are like specific little rules that in that realm. And the Nostr implementation possibility 82 was actually put together by people that are already in the Nostr space. So we've been going back and forth with them about, okay, we need to somehow integrate that FHIR aspect into Nostr, and that's what NIP82 is about. So I don't know if you've heard of Amethyst, the application Amethyst.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vitor Pamplona is the guy behind that, and we're actually working with him and his team in Fabrica to actually do that as well.
Is that an event?
Sorry?
Is that an event, or is it?
No. If you go to Nostr Fabrica as an organization that is also working in that health space, and I would actually look them up, because right now there's like a open source development initiative, come and join us, start developing on NIP82, which is the SALUD protocol NIP part, the fire part. And as I said, this is an open source world, so there's already stuff out there where people are saying, hey, you can build on NIP82. You can start building and adding to the SALUD protocol with this initiative. And there's even funds out there, so you can win money, I guess, for good applications that you might building. So we're already in that open source realm out there.
And if you're a developer, programmer watching this, check that out. We'll make sure we'll put the link in the description below.
Yeah,
Chris, regular listener and viewer, I'm thinking of you. Check it out.
All right, fair enough.
Sorry, we got sidetracked slightly there. So
no, that's all right. That's all right. So yeah, for people like your Chris, there's already stuff out there. People can always approach us directly if they want to as well. But yeah, we're already out there. It's already parts of the SALUD protocol are already out there and being developed on. And what you were saying is, it takes time, but the idea is basically to make this all open, where everyone can build whatever they want on this thing and make it happen. I mean, I don't know. I'm hoping there's going to be applications out there that I haven't even thought about that people are going to be putting together and building in this realm. I mean, the health industry is big and very, very big. So there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of things that you can do in this space. I mean, I remember someone talking about a smartwatch. We all have smartwatches, right? So exactly. We all have, well, I don't have one, but yes, a lot of people have smartwatches. And well, there you go. There's a lot of health information out there, and that's basically sucked into this centralized vortex, and you never ever see it again. You don't even know what happens to that information, right? But I can tell you, though, that in the health industry, the value of data, the health data, is about $2 trillion a year, from what I understand. So that's a lot of value that's there. Right now, again, that's being sucked from every single device. It's being manipulated, being controlled. I don't know what they do with it. Good, bad, it doesn't really matter. But it is not ours. But it did actually come out of your body, that information. So it should be yours, right? So you should be the one that actually controls that. You should be the one that actually says yes or no, you can use that. But that's not how the digital world works right now. And that's, again, not just for health. That's how the digital works. So what we're doing is we're saying, okay, well, if I control that health identity and I control that health information, even if it is on my watch, maybe I should get something for it if someone is going to use it. So in other words, trying to then say, okay, let's turn it back on to the owner and say, give the owner back control back instead of, I think, as I said, I mean, people need to think about what does it mean to own your own digital identity and to control your own digital information. And what we're doing that is I said, put it into the health world, which is massive. There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of information there. There's a lot of misinformation there and playing around with information there. And if we had a way where the individual can control the information and the data, we know that the data is not manipulated. We know that the data is genuine. It's not played around with. Then what does that mean if we basically give control back to the individual? And I always think that what we're really about is we're about democratizing data, meaning Right now, there's so much information out there and we don't even know where it came from and who owns it. But if we can actually have individuals verifiably say this is true, honest information because it came from them, because they own the keys, then you can really go and say, we're democratizing information, we're democratizing data in this very centralized world where that's the word democracy has actually lost a lot of clout.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think those are very poignant points, and I wish you the best of luck when it comes to this project and in the future. And we would love to have you back on and give us an update maybe later down the line and see how things are progressing. If you'd like to come on, any closing thoughts, Fabian, for your audience, and where can they learn more? We've already talked about Nos Fabrica, but any other links to shill?
Yeah, so just look up Illuminodes on Google. It'll pop up with us, with interviews, with podcasts, and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we're always open to feedback, resources. I mean, any initiative, and certainly open source initiative, is always looking for people to join and to come on board and work with us or support us or fund us or whatever it is. So definitely open to people that are interested in what we're doing. And I think the other thing is start looking at Nostr. Start looking at what Nostr is about, what Nostr can do, and start thinking about it as well. I mean, we obviously have busy lives, but there's some new technologies like Bitcoin and now Nostr out there that are, I think, world changing. So so start looking at that, start investigating, because I think it's definitely where the future is going.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Fabian, for joining us. And to our listeners, if you're inspired, as I am, by what Fabian and the Illuminodes team are doing, keep an eye on El Salvador. It's becoming a global leader in tech and healthcare innovation. Don't forget to subscribe to the HIPAA Insider Show and leave us a review. Until next time, I'm Adam, reminding you, stay compliant, stay informed, and take control of your data. Cheers.